Unless he was going to talk about
Let's get started.
Yeah.
You didn't
Ándale.
eat sandwiches.
You know,
So you're waiting
no
work?
trajeron nada.
Marcy falls asleep at 7, so
Ándale,
gotta
vamos.
get the meeting done.
Okay. All right. I now call to order the study session of Mayor and City Council meeting, 5:45 p.m. this Wednesday, April 25th. Will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Councilman Lucero, would you lead us in the pledge?
Be my pleasure, Mayor. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Okay. So let's start here with our discussion items, and we have the fiscal year 2019 preliminary tentative budget discussion, and Mrs. Jeanette Perales, would you shed some light on?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'd be more than happy to shed some light on the current budget process that we are in for fiscal year 2018-2019. And I always have to.
That you, Marcy?
Okay. So just
angels singing.
just a quick overview as to why we have a budget. The purpose and the goal of the City of Nogales budget is, of course, to provide all overall services to the citizens in Nogales. This is done by effectively managing the funds that the city collects to provide the best core services to the community, and we accomplish this through proposing the budget, the annual budget. And so, just really quick to kind of elaborate on how much revenue we will collect for next year. What we anticipate we will collect, because again, keep in mind that these are estimates that we prepare based on past history. The city anticipates that it will collect revenues and use carry forwards from this year in the amount of $39,961,445. And if you look at the graph, it shows where the monies are coming from. Of course, general fund being the biggest fund that we have. That is the fund where we have our sales tax, court fees, our state shared revenues, building permit fees, some police grants, just a combination of everything. Franchise fees also are in that amount, and then the contingency that we usually budget every year in the amount of $2 million. And then as we go further down, we've got HERF, sewer, water, sanitation, and Nogales Housing Authority. And again, keep in mind that these are all the funds that we have available to use to provide the core services to the City of Nogales' citizens. If we go to the next page, we talk about how much we're going to spend and on what. So this year, if you look at the next slide, it shows all the different categories that we have in the city. And as you can see in the graph, our biggest expense is our payroll at $20 million. And then we go down to professional services. These are usually vendors that we contract out with to provide, again, services to the city. And contractual also is one of them. One example I can give you is like our trash. We have an agreement with Tucson Recycling where they take the trash that the city collects. And then we have our supplies. We have other operating. We have the debt, which incorporates the bond payments that we are obligated to have, and also our WIFA loan. The bank lease that we have that will be ending in December to pay for any equipment that was needed. And then there's an agreement with APS for a study that was done many years ago on energy saving, and that debt is supposed to end in 2021. And then we have our interfund transfers, which is the services that are provided within the city, which is our fleet, inventory warehouse, public utility, those costs are spread out over the funds that provide the core services. We have a little bit of capital outlay, and then we have our fund balance, which is, again, the amount that is from prior years from effectively managing our revenues and expenses. We have an excess, and that creates our fund balance. So the big important question is, will our budget be balanced? And yes, I'm proud and happy to say that our budget is balanced and is addressing all our operational needs for this year. And when I say operational, it's our day-to-day ability to provide services. And to go a little bit further, just to discuss how do we balance the budget, there was a 3% increase in state share revenues this year. There is an 8.8% decrease in health insurance premiums, and I'll provide those numbers right now. And department heads did a great job of analyzing their needs and submitting reductions that could help us to balance the budget. We will have an increase in water, sewer, and sanitation rates this year. It's the second to the last. This will take place in September, and then the last increase will be in 2019 in September as well. In addition, there will be no increase for insurance costs, so workers' compensation, building, property, and liability insurances are all going to stay the same. And this wasn't used to help balance our budget, but we did include the $750 one-time payment for all employees, and this is net of any taxes and pension responsibilities that the city has that is obligated to pay out this money. So when we go on, we decide what is the next step. The next step is to address any requests that departments have made that are currently not funded in the budget. Those range from vehicle requests to infrastructure improvements, equipment, and some professional services. We need to determine which items are priority and create a plan to fund these requests over the next 5 years. Based on what has been submitted, I think that it's a good idea to look at the request, analyze, decide which ones are absolutely necessary within the next year, and then phase out the rest of the items within the next 5 years. And so our final outcome would be to begin the new fiscal year on July 1st, 2018 with the final budget approved. And then also to continue to work with mayor and council and the department directors to address the needs of the city's operations in an effective and efficient manner. And I just have any questions before we go on to going by department. Yes, Councilman Estrada.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, go ahead, Councilman.
so as we go through it, department by department, when department heads aren't here, who will answer those questions? Will that be you?
All right, I can also
Okay,
say
just want to make sure because I know not all the departments are here. But
that's correct.
so, for example, the attorney's office isn't here, so when we start making cuts, they're going to have to accept what we made, right?
Right, exactly right. This is their opportunity. That's it. Okay.
Thank you.
So let me go ahead and bring up. So I'm going to put on the screen the materials that you were originally handed to back on April 2nd, April 4th. Yes. I did provide you with a summary sheet that is a little bit different from what's in the book. Basically, the only major change is the one-time payment that we've gone ahead and incorporated for this year for the employees. I think that is the most significant change that's in this document versus the one you have in front of you. And also, I've added the difference in the amounts of how the budgets have come up and down.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilman.
So if you can scroll down a little bit, Jeanette, on the cover memo. If you could tell us in percentage what the dollars are for each of those items? When you say general fund, state shared revenue increased 3%, you know, what does that mean in dollars and on down the page, just so we have a better understanding of what those percentages mean, because a percentage in one line item is going to mean something in another line item, so just so you have do dollars for dollars, I guess.
Okay. Okay, so when we look at state shared revenues, and I mentioned that there's a 3% increase on the transaction privilege tax, which is the portion that the city receives for what the state imposes on any retail and other, you know, bed tax and all that. This year's amount is 1.9 million, and last year's amount was 1.8. So just to give you a better idea.
100K.
Yes, 109,000, more or less. And like you say, Councilman, it's not a huge amount, but it's still.
Just so we go on.
Adds up. Under the urban revenue, which is the state tax that individuals pay when they do their income tax returns, we anticipate receiving 2.45, and last year was 2.47, so another 103,000 more. Right. No, I'm sorry. This one's gonna it's less. I'm sorry. It dropped.
It's less.
It dropped by 19,000. I apologize about that.
That's a wash. So we're down to 80. More or less right now.
And then on the vehicle license tax, which is the tax that is imposed on when like the license plates and vehicles purchased and all that, this year we're going to collect, we anticipate 1.8, and last year was 1.7, so about 113,000. I'm sorry, 84,000.
So about 160 total net increase on just on the state share. So the health insurance decreased 8.8. What does that mean in dollars? That should be a big number.
So for the health insurance, the total decrease, and for general fund, the savings is 194,000. For the HERF fund, it's 15,000, almost 16. For sewer, we're looking at 14,000 savings. Water, 17,800. Sanitation, 33,000. Fleet, warehouse and utilities, which again, these are the internal service funds, 4,000, 3,000, and 5,000, and then housing 14,000 for a total of 303,000.
Okay. So if why don't we just get down to the police and fire on what those impacts are?
So for police, the pension increase, we're looking at 180,000 for next year. And for fire, 385,000.
Wow.
And just so for police, we pay 50 cents on a dollar for pension, and for fire, it's 60 cents on the dollar.
Almost 400K on the fire.
Yes.
Wow. And then on you mentioned you included the 750 one-time bonus. What's the total impact of that?
I think it was like 158,000. Was that too bad? The nice thing about the one-time payment versus doing an increase is that police and fire were not obligated to pay the employer contribution on the pension, so that's a huge savings. And as well, the employee is not required to pay it. So even if we propose like a 1% increase, they're still taking more money
There's pros and
with
cons.
a one-time payment than.
I'll argue the other side later. But
And I'll argue the other side.
Well, the other side is that it's not permanent, and
mm-hmm.
when it comes time to retire, they don't have that additional income in their amounts. But
Which is why my conservative friend would rather see employees suffer.
get to that one.
And again, like this, so this number has changed because at the time this memo was prepared, we did not have the one-time payment in there. So we're looking at 108,000 surplus at this moment. With HERF, we actually had a decrease in revenue this year for 3%. So.
And that doesn't make sense because the state had been taking HERF, subsidized DPS, and we should be seeing an increase. I don't know why that is.
So the number they're proposing this year for revenue is they're proposing 2.2, and last year was 2.3.
This
So
is
a little over 100,000.
Is this coming from the state then? Is that?
Yes. All the state share revenues are numbers they provide to us. We really have no say in them.
We got a question that doesn't make sense that we would see a decrease from that.
But is DPS, there was state legislation to take DPS out of the HERF. Did that pass? Did you know?
Yeah.
I didn't
Say
follow.
it.
I saw that, but I didn't follow it. It did.
Yeah.
All right. So then there should be an increase because that's a less expenditure.
Yeah.
But I think also population has a lot to do with it when they calculate the amounts.
And we're not growing. Okay.
And as we go further down and look at the other funds, which is our enterprise funds, water, sewer, sanitation, those also have surpluses. But again, that is due to the rate increases that we anticipate will generate more revenue for these funds. And then Nogales Housing Authority, we don't have much say on their budget. It's really what they provide us. The city's role in their finances or their expenditures is very minimal. After recommendation from HUD, they have taken on paying their own bills. Whereas before we would process AP for them and everything, and then they would reimburse us for the expenses. And now they're doing most of their accounts payable. We just manage their payroll.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you. I just a little thing on this. We're talking on the sanitation. The revenue, you say it's better, the sanitation fund, because of the increase in the habits. And the concern that I have is in the last 3 years, we've lost 42 commercial accounts.
That's correct.
And that equals dollars. And I just can't see with all of the trucks that we have and everything that we're losing 42 commercial accounts. Because if I don't want to be in a position to tell the public that we need, on the one hand, we need to increase your rates so that the enterprise fund can stay in the black. And on the other side, tell the people, well, we're increasing here, but at the same time, we're losing business. And we're losing all of these accounts to private enterprise. So how can we tell the people, because at first, when this came up for discussion, I wasn't in favor of reducing the rates. But if you're going to ask the people, on the one hand, to pay more out of their pocket, and then the employees, on the other hand, are saying, well, we lost 42 accounts, that equals X dollars. How do you balance that? I just don't understand. Why are we losing accounts? Why are we losing so many accounts in the last 3 years? Why aren't we staying on top of this? Because this is money. Now, of course, if I was in the garbage collection business and I lost 42 accounts, I'd probably be out of business. But we're not out of business, but we've lost. So in 3 years, Jenna, the city has lost 42 accounts.
That's correct.
That X dollars, have we reduced the personnel? Have we made, what cuts did you make in the reductions since we lost 42 accounts?
I just can't see doing business like this, losing accounts like this.
And unfortunately, the private company that has come into the city, they offer fabulous rates, and of course, any business person is going to jump at the opportunity to pay less for the same service. But the caveat there is that in 2 years, they can come and say, oh, well, yeah, this was a great rate we offered you, but now we're going to jack up your rates 25%. And since they're not controlled by a government entity like we are, what is the merchant going to do?
So has any of those 42 canceled accounts come back and say, hey, they raised my rates and now I want them back to the city? Has anybody done that?
I'm not sure if that has happened. I would need to follow up on that and get an answer to it.
It just, Mayor, it's very, that we're asking people for more money and then we're losing business on the other hand. I don't mind, you know, if we need money, Desperado, to work on our infrastructure, fine. We have to provide an infrastructure. When the people go to their toilet and they press that level, they want to make sure that everything is flushed out and that we have the infrastructure in place. When they turn on the faucets, they want to make sure that the infrastructure is full. But I just can't see losing 42 accounts and we're still doing business with the same personnel. We're not taking any cuts to show that. And it's unfortunate that the employees of the Public Works have to come and tell me that this is going on for me to find this out.
Councilman, I think I'll add a word to it. I know Councilman Lucero has his hand up, and I'll address you right away, Councilman. But what I've seen and experienced out there on the street is garbage trucks going, because they have their GPS, going to private establishments, and because it might be lightly raining or something, a sprinkle, they'll go and park in front of the bin, never get down and load it up, drive off, and come and spend a little time to make up for the time that they're supposed to pick up the garbage. Then they drive off, but they never picked up the garbage. So it's not about, it's lack of service. We're not servicing those people. And there's not enough supervision out there from Public Works that should be on top of that, and if they're experiencing that problem, you should be calling those companies and asking, finding out why. Why? What is it that they're not? It's not about that they're getting a better deal. You know, if they're not getting the service, then of course they're going to go for a better deal and go somewhere else.
Concur.
But we need to make sure that our employees are doing their job. That's the bottom line.
You're correct there, Dr. Felix. It's just something that
Can I have the floor?
Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Varona, I guess.
I'll wait.
Can I engage in the discussion, or
yes.
do I just jump in? And,
No.
We'll go ahead, Councilman Lucero.
I'm
sorry
trying to
about
be
that.
orderly, but if Dr. Varona keeps jumping in, I guess I can just start jumping in. Is that?
No, you were next, actually.
Yes,
and
we're next, okay.
Yes, Councilman, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I believe the statutes allow for commercial enterprises to go with whoever. Residential, we have some control over. When we looked at outsourcing sanitation a year or two ago, that was the big issue, the commercial accounts, because everybody knows that's where the revenue is made in sanitation and commercial accounts. And when we looked at it, that's how we looked at maintaining the revenue stream to support that department. So it's imperative, and I concur with both the mayor and Dr. Varona, that if we're not doing a good job on the commercial end of it, if we're losing, it begs the question of why are we in the sanitation business?
That's the point that I want to bring out, and that's the point, Doctor. I think Councilman Lucero has summarized the narratives between the mayor and myself. That's all I'm asking for right now. I know we're not going to solve it now, but something has to be done. I mean, we have all of these people. We invested in all of this equipment. That's fine, but we can't be losing accounts. You got to tell us what's going on, and it should come from you people. Just tell us what's going on. Maybe you're going to come back and say maybe we need to outsource it or whatever. But I just bring this up because we're supposed to run this as much as we can as a business, and I just can't see losing accounts and then say, hey, we're doing fine. And I'm not gonna continue, if this isn't brought up, Mayor and members, my colleagues, I'm not going to support an increase in the sanitation. That I'll tell you right now. And if they wanna decrease it, I'll probably vote to decrease it. Because I do not wanna continue like this.
Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, City Manager.
Verona, we started to look at the options that, of perhaps going out to bid or restructuring the whole sanitation. So we're starting to look at it. We'll come back to the full report.
Okay. That's fine. I want to bring it up, and please, just a little transparency here. The 7 of us here deserve to hear this from you, not the employees coming to tell us, you know, that this is going on over here, and we're afraid we're gonna lose our jobs. These things should come from you on a monthly basis. Tell us what's going on, so we can, you know, I feel foolish at times. What are you talking about?
And just an additional note to that, Councilman Barona, is that the equipment used in this fund is very expensive to maintain.
Right.
Tires are very expensive and they wear out very easily, and of course if anything goes wrong in the truck, to repair it, we're talking, you know, it's not like a regular car where we're talking $200-300, we're talking thousands of dollars to repair these vehicles, so that also is a huge factor. And if you look at what a residential customer pays for sanitation, it's very cheap. It's $18.69 a month, and if you average it out, it's $2.33 a pickup, which is, I think, is a great price. If you go anywhere else, I'm sure that you're paying a lot more for trash pickup 2 times a week, you know, whole month, and then plus green waste as well.
Yes, go ahead, Councilman.
What did you say? What was the price? $18?
$18.69 a month for sanitation, for trash pickup.
For the residential?
For
Or
residential.
for residential. But that's the question. Do we know exactly what it costs us in commercial? I mean, do we have just an idea, or do we know exactly what it is?
So for commercial, it depends on the size of the container that they use. So I think the cheapest one is $66, and that's
But the cost should be the same if you're going to pick up, you know, depends on the yard it is, but it's the same. It's the same two gentlemen that go pick it up. So that cost and the truck could be pretty much the same cost.
Yes,
Yeah. So actually, the bigger the container, the more we should be making.
that's correct.
Right?
Which is why the commercial accounts are so important to.
Yes,
to the
yes,
city.
they're very important. But again, like Councilman Barona said, we've been losing commercial accounts. And, you know, some of it, I mean, you know, I've been quoted by other companies, right? It's not that big of a difference. There is a difference, but I mean, overall, I mean, we're not talking about, you know, huge amounts of money, at least in my position. Obviously, what it charges for Walmart or whatever could be very, very different. But again, does Walmart do their own, or do they have waste management, or pick it up for them?
I believe they're doing waste management now. You do Walmart?
We do Walmart?
We have waste management has some service to Walmart.
Well, they also service
Yes,
Walmart?
they do service Walmart though too. But the city had it all at one time.
And I mean, was there a huge difference in what we were charging, or was it a matter that they just needed more service than we could supply?
They just decided to do that in the corporation.
To use waste management and to use the city together at the same time?
Goes back to you, nobody follows it.
So when we chased after a lot of these companies that closed up, Jack in the Box was one, with a couple other that Waste Management. By the way, Waste Management has not taken one business from us on Morley Avenue. Not one. Why?
Can't
It's
get
not
their
worth
truck,
it.
they can't get their
It's
trucks
not
on
worth
the
it.
Sure, it's not worth it.
$53 for all the garbage you could throw out there. They're not gonna touch it. They'll let the city do that. But anyway, we did chase after a few, a couple of years ago when we lost those 9 accounts, Dr. Barona. And like Jack in the Box was one, and a lot of them were going because Waste Management came in and they gave that introductory rate. And as we talked to some of the professionals, when we talked to RAD and Tucson Waste Recycling, they all know what's going on. They can write off Nogales. They can, they're so big that they can get Nogales on the hook, get the choice customers, right? And then fluctuate the rates as they go along. So there's a trick to this, right? But also when we went back to Walmart, I mean not Walmart, Jack in the Box, and we spoke to the manager of Jack in the Box and said, hey, listen, we want you to stick with the city of Nogales. I mean, we're the ones that are providing you with police, fire, parks for your kids to play, schools for your kids. Don't send your money to Waste Management in Chicago. And they said, we would love to. We would love to use the city of Nogales, but corporate wants to write one check. So they make a deal for all of the Jack in the Box, so we struggle with that also. It's hard for us to compete. But yeah, you're right. We are losing some commercial accounts, and as soon as the state opened it up for outside competition, we knew that was going to happen. Another thing, our commercial accounts subsidizes our residential accounts. So just that's why it's a little bit more expensive, because our businesses are helping the people who live in the community for that garbage truck to go by your house 3 times a day, regardless of
Yes, go ahead, Councilman.
Except, John, like McDonald's and I think Burger King and Jack in the Box, they're all franchises.
Some are yeah, some are local. Yeah.
But I think Nogales, all of the ones down here are all franchises. None of them are corporate owned.
Right.
So they cut the check. It's not McDonald's headquartered in wherever that cuts a check.
Right. I was just talking in the case of Jack in the Box. I don't want to talk to Jack.
Is that a corporate store?
I think so. Yeah,
It is a corporate store, the one down there. Does McDonald's, do we pick up at McDonald's?
I don't know. I think we do.
We do pick up?
Yeah.
So what are the ones we lost?
I'll analyze it for you and get you a report.
Yeah.
All right.
That would be better. Give
Yeah.
us a report. They
Yeah,
don't-
maybe we can get together with these people.
Because what I gave you is the 42 that we lost, right? But we lose and we gain. These are over a month's, an average a month. So, you know, 1 month we might have more and some months we might have less. These are total
Maybe
accounts.
it'd be easier, Mayor, if they would just give us a monthly report on all of this, so
Yeah.
we can move on with this, but this is a concern.
Right.
Yeah, and we can put it on the report with who we lost and who we gained. Right? So that way we can have an idea.
Sure.
I'm not gonna sit here.
And again, just one more. And I've been asking for a long time, Dr. Felix, on the downtown and everybody, I know Walmart takes care of all their cardboard. Penny's takes care of their cardboard. You know, what do we do with it? Downtown, they generate, as far as I can see, they generate very little garbage.
Yeah.
It's cardboard that they generate. So why, when we collect that cardboard, I mean, why don't we just cut a deal with them? Years and years ago, after talking to them, they started folding all the cardboard. But we never picked it up as cardboard. We kept picking it up as garbage and throwing it into the landfill, so we were being charged for that. When actually we should be getting the cardboard and seeing if we can just get rid of it, even if we make a deal with Walmart to give them the cardboard so they can send it to wherever they send it,
Sure.
right?
Sure. So, that's recycling, right? We're talking about
Right.
commercial recycling.
Right?
And we're planning on bringing a study session in and bringing the experts in to talk to you all about recycling, the benefits, the cost, and commercial recycling. So we'll have that study session later.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, Councilman?
That's where my question was gonna be, you know, what have we done on the recycling? You know, I see at least 20 Mexican trucks and with their U-Hauls and trailers and stuff, taking all that cardboard into Mexico. And, you know, they're taking advantage of free money that's left out in the street.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Councilman Diaz?
My question is, do we have a cost and expenditure for residential and/or business? Is it separate, or it just goes into the one deal?
We can break out revenues, but we can't break out expenditures
Okay.
because the whole thing
Okay.
services both.
Okay, so maybe if in that study that we're gonna do it in a month or so, we could add that, you know, we bring in so much for commercial, and we bring in so much for residential.
We can do that on revenues.
On revenues, right?
I can absolutely do that for
Okay,
the revenue,
okay.
but I can't do it for you
Right, I
on
understand.
expenditures.
I understand that, yeah.
It's just gonna show how much commercial supporting the residential.
Anything else from the council? Any comments, questions? Okay, Jeanette?
Next.
Just to finalize on the memo, there was some positive outcomes that I wanted to point out. Sorry about that. As you know, that the city is currently replacing all the water meters. I think it's in its final stages, Mr. Marcellus. And this is going to be a huge help to improve efficiencies when it comes to reading meters, and also the readings will be more accurate, not relying on someone's numbers that are written down or not being able to read handwriting. So this should be a big help to that fund. And also the money that we move to interest earning accounts, the money market, and then CDs that were purchased. I want to say that for the first quarter, the money earned $97,000 interest. So we anticipate that by the end of the year, it'll be about $400,000, which I think is great, and money that we didn't have before. And then the final thing, of course, the health insurance cost reduce. As by the numbers I provided, you can see that it's been a big help in helping us balance our budget.
Mayor, may I just make a comment, please?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Marcel, I want to thank you for your leadership on, even though I don't quite agree with how that committee is compromised, okay? Composed of. But I do want to thank you and the committee for your leadership on getting the health insurance and watching the expenditures and getting that reduction, because you can see it has been a great reduction. So thank you for your leadership there. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
So now we go on to just some graphs that were produced, and then of course we wanted to recognize their leadership.
How come none of us have the same picture? Why is Marcy so special? Look at him, he's got the shaded background. Is he trying to stand out apart from the rest of us? Everyone has a seal behind us except...
No.
There's only one guy with a halo there.
No, George and I came in last, and they didn't want us to take our picture by the symbol there.
I think we need to get in front of the...
Do an updated. I think
I'm an angel,
a more
all white and
professional
black.
picture would be nice.
Especially Marcy looks young in that picture. It's been doctored. Get him a real up-to-date photo.
Move on.
And also, we felt it was important to incorporate the strategic plan, the goals that you have identified when it comes to the city and where it wants to be. So all your goals are also included in the budget document.
Thank you for that, Dr. Felix.
As we move on to the next page, we have our organizational chart. And I do need to update this to include Mr. Parra. And then the next sheet is the summary, which you now have an updated one in front of you. And these are the numbers that I presented in my first document. Let me just see, should all tie into those. And just to know, for you to know that this is just operating. This does not include any grants that we receive. We'll include that separately. There's not many that we have for this year.
Is that you?
No. I turned my phone off. I'm not like you. Turn my phone on.
And just a brief description. This color. Go on. Same thing.
Yep.
And the next few slides are all our major revenues. We wanted to show the revenues for the last 10 years, just so you could get an idea where we're at. And as you can see, 10 years ago, sales tax collected here in the city was at 11 million.
That's great.
Fortunately, that has declined and continues to decline, where last year we were at 9 million. So we are feeling the impact of businesses closing and people not shopping here. We don't anticipate much of an increase for next year.
Jeanette, can you hit that one little arrow on your side screen there so
Oh,
you
yes,
can
dear.
see the rest of the,
Yes.
there.
Thank you. I do want to say that we are a higher amount in collections this year, but we're not at the budgeted amount. We're like 3% behind. But I believe that with the Arizona Department of Revenue now collecting on our behalf, it has helped. Before, a business could report to the Arizona Department of Revenue because, of course, they didn't want to have any issues with them, but they would not have been as reported to the city because they probably figured, what's the city going to do to me? Whereas there's a Department of Revenue can freeze their accounts and put liens on their property and everything. So now they're more accountable for reporting their sales for both state and city shares. And that's why we're probably at a higher amount this year as far as collections.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead, Councilman.
Janet, could you explain to us what effect the net sales have on Nogales? I understand it's been increasing.
Yes, and I started working on getting that information together, but I was having a little bit of issues downloading the information from the website. But I would like to report that we'll probably include it in the final budget document so we can see what the outcome is on that. So
But it has been increasing year to year.
Again, I need to finish my comparison so I can be sure.
Jeanette, along those lines, will your report include the sales that are made through Amazon, those that people from across the border come and pick up, and I guess there's some kind of a sales revenue at the end of that?
Unfortunately, I can't provide that much detail.
No, but do you think you could find out a little bit about it, at least to include some of it, to enlighten us a little on that? What does the city get from those sales that go into Mexico from the local, I guess, outlets that they have?
I don't have access to that, Mayor, because when Amazon, if they report any sales tax collected, it's going to be on the whole. It's not going to say this sale was from someone that picked up at Correo Federal and this one went to an actual.
Would they have that information? Correo Federales?
I mean, I guess we'd have to.
Could you just inquire just to see if they have anything?
Sure. Yeah, it would mean reaching out to Amazon and asking, but I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, when I met with you in the budget, one of the things that we noticed was the ambulance fees. Did you go back and look at that to see what the issues were there?
We had already reached out to the company that provides the service for us, and then I tried to call her, and she was out on leave for the week, and I have not had an opportunity to call her again, but I will follow up with her and make sure that we're back on track as far as the collections. I know she mentioned that they had some turnover and they were trying to reorganize, so. Then we go on to our franchise fees, which is utilities, electric, gas, cable. Again, a slight decline as we go through the years.
Pretty big decline recently. Why is that?
Again, since they just provide a check and not really much detail for how they determine the amounts.
I mean, we're missing close to 200,000 from previous years.
And it could just be the timing, Councilman Lucero, because they pay every 3 months. So we'll, like in April, we should have received a check for the first quarter.
So that one will bump up. So you can, if that happens, will you adjust the projected then?
Yes.
Okay.
As we go on to our state shared sales tax, just like what we saw in the city, those also have decreased. Back in 2017, we were at 2 million, and now we're currently at 1.8. So that kind of resembles with what we're experiencing. The income tax from 3 million down to 2 million. So all of these have also been, we have been impacted by the continued decreases. which again, all these revenues are in, population-based. So if our population drops, then these numbers will also drop. Vehicle license tax, 1.5, and now at 1.7, so that one has gone up. Probably people starting to buy more vehicles.
The Trump effect. Yeah,
And-
the Trump effect. The Trump effect, more people are buying cars.
Making America great, right, Councilman Seta?
Thank God.
And then
Marcy's
perf,
president.
perf, we went down.
Well, went up.
And then you'll see an increase in 15, 16, and that is because of the overweight piece that we began to collect. And then our sewer user fees.
On the HERF hub, on the HERF hub, since we've been, you're estimating going down almost 200,000,
Yes, her did have a 3%.
the 3%.
So we're asking, it shouldn't be going down because they're no longer taking away our share, so. But it could be the population, like you said, where everyone's going except for us.
As a city, are we gonna be doing anything for the census?
And here are sewer user fees. You've seen the last 4 years an increase. That's because of the rate increase that was implemented. Same for water. You can see that it continues to grow the budgeted revenues. And then your sanitation fees. If you see it's flat, so that means that the increase was probably, it hasn't been that much, the rate increase.
Janelle, could you just, a comment that you made on the water deal, if you could, see, the budgeted amount that you have there, 3 million, it does continue to grow, but for what our community needs with its aging pipelines, infrastructure, we have, it's still not sufficient, it's still not sufficient.
Thank you.
To
Do all of
the
that,
budget,
okay?
yes.
So just be careful with the words because I don't want people to think, oh, well, you got enough money to do all. We don't have the money to do all the aging infrastructure that we need to do to provide safe water and everything.
But the increases were meant to address those issues, or
Part
begin
of
to
the
address
plan.
those
It's
issues.
part of the plan, yeah. But we still have to go into debt to do all of it. You're not gonna do it with $3 million.
And so now we get into the departments. And our first department is non-departmental. And non-departmental is kind of your catch-all for when it's not department-specific. The retiree health insurance is paid out of here, our debt, our fleet allocation, any transfers that are made. And if we look at there's an 11% increase. A huge amount was because, again, the retiree costs that we're seeing the savings there.
And your contractual services and professional services line items, scroll back up a little bit, just so you can see that perfect for the years.
440, yeah.
If you look at it, we're showing a pretty good increase, and if you look at our spending the last couple of years, it's actually been, a year before last, it was at 364, we budgeted 430. I guess the question is, I don't know where we're tracking with that 430 to merit a 440,000 increase. And then if you look at professional services too, we've been down in the 200 range for most of the, probably on average, close to 200. Now we're up to 318. Just wondering why we're seeing, or you're projecting increases in spending there for.
So last year, the current budget that was proposed, it wasn't added correctly. So when we looked at the information this year, we noticed that everything that was needed for that was not added up correctly. So
Wasn't recorded correctly?
yes, the amount was not correct. So now we fixed that.
So we should trust you now, is that what you're saying?
Yes. Please. And then your contractual services, well, that's all, that's the insurance, general liability, vehicle insurance, that's the
Okay.
majority of that line item. Some travel memberships, well, that's paid to the league, that is recorded in this department.
Does that, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, does that include the rebate there for the insurance? Is that why it shows it like that? Because before we didn't get it. You go down to 215, we probably went for 214, we weren't getting it. But does that show that where it's 440,000? Because obviously it increased, or we had more cars added or more equipment added. So, but are we getting a rebate now on the insurance?
When you say rebate, I'm not like I'm not familiar with the
That
rebate.
was part of the program there, that after 3 years, depends on what our claims were, that the pool actually refunds you some money, or there's a rebate in there.
It'd just be a revenue they'd stick somewhere in general fund, so.
Right, but we are going to receive a rebate for workers' comp and not for vehicles. I think our accidents are substantial.
From the pool? Is it from the pool?
Yes.
Did we get anything last year on it?
No, I've never seen a rebate from the pool.
Dr. Felix, have you? Because that was part of the program. I mean, we went to that program. After X years, there would be rebates.
Yeah.
Are we getting it, or our claims are too high to get it, or what?
It could be the claims are too high, but I'll research that out.
Yeah, could we find out? Because that was when we went to that program. After 3 years, they would start rebating. It depends on what the claims were. And here I see, I mean, there's got to be a reason. I mean, it used to be, like you said, 580,000, or there's something else in there, 473, and now we're at 440. Even though in 2017 it was pretty far down. I don't know why it was that far down, but maybe that's when we got a rebate and we didn't get the rebate in the other years.
And just so I point out, in 2015-16 vehicle insurance was 87,000, and last year it dropped to 53,000. So we might not be receiving money, but maybe our premiums are less, and that's where we get the savings.
But if we just check on that, Dr. Felix.
I will.
And then there was a small drop in the financing again, the debt financing, some savings on when we refunded the bonds in 2016. Next department is the mayor's department. Small reduction, and that is a savings from change in positions for the administrative assistant, where the prior individual is making more money than when there is a family.
Mr. Mayor, just Jeanette, on the bonds, no new bonds have been added. It's just been refinancing, right?
Yes.
I mean, do we have an actual amount of what we owe on the bonds?
It's 34 million.
34 million? What is that down from what it was the year before, or 2 years down?
It was like 53 prior to the refundings.
It was 53? But on the refunding, we didn't pay anything into it, so I mean, how did it drop 20 million?
I think that when they calculate what we're going to pay back and everything, because we refund bonds, I think is the intention of that. We return money when the refunding is done.
Well, when we refunded, basically we just extend it, maybe get a little better interest, but the principal basically stays the same.
Not unless we utilized it. I think we didn't spend all the revenue, right?
Maybe if we didn't spend
so
all the bond money, or maybe we gave some of the bond money back.
It's possible. I can reach out to Mr. Vasquez, and I wasn't involved very much in that process. It was Sherry, so
Yeah, maybe we can ask him. He can give us an information on it, or maybe even have a study session on the bonds.
Well, if we move on, we look at council. No major changes there. The 1% decrease is because of the health insurance savings.
Just kind of curious, what's our payroll for?
The $25 you receive a month plus the health insurance premium.
But there's $80,000 there for payroll.
because of the health insurance.
Insurance
All the
premium.
health.
It's everything you spend when you go
Okay.
out of town.
Thank you.
All your trips that you take, adds up, you know, $2,000 a month.
And then emergency response, no change. This is just kind of like a safety net for us if there is an emergency and we anticipate any expenses. We have this available, but again, only if an emergency arises where the state is going to step in and help us pay that cost. Then we move on to city manager. Percentage change is 8%. There was we decided to move the city clerk into its own department, and because since she manages elections and all that, so we thought it would be wiser to have her separately. And then there's just a few, health insurance.
You happy with that, Letty? You happy with that? You got your own budget now? You can do what you want now?
I don't have money in the budget. Give me the money so I could do.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, she was going for this, I just to help you out, I went to my personal Amazon account and checked. All last year, no sales tax was taken on all of my purchases, but starting in January 1st, they've been charging me 8.6%, which is the
So there,
tax rate.
there will be a,
So they are charging taxes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
So for city manager department, a little bit of savings in the payroll, the position, the management analyst, we reduced that a little bit. And I think the assistant that Dr. Felix would like is the position is a bit less than what Letty was making, so that kind of compensated and helped with the savings. There's a little bit of increase in training and a decrease in contractual services. Nothing too significant. We move on to finance. We eliminated one position, so that gave us the 4%. The person that collected the sales tax, did all the requirements for sales tax, resigned, so we didn't need the position anymore, so we went ahead and eliminated it. We go on to HR. That one has a significant increase. There were some adjustments made in payroll.
So I was trying to figure out, Jeanette, if your staffing didn't change, why did your payroll increase?
Our payroll increase?
That's what it says. If you look at the bottom line item, it went up.
So for the finance department, the payroll decreased. It was current budget is at 925, and this year it's 879.
Talking about human resources.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're looking at HR.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not finance.
No.
Okay, HR.
We passed finance, right? Your
Okay.
slide was on HR, so that's what you're not keeping up with your slides.
I thought you said finance. Sorry.
No.
Yes, HR did go up from 227 to 253. I think what the intention was to recruit and retain an HR director. The pay for that position was very low. It was $65,000, so the individual that was here prior, asked for a little bit more, and so I think again trying to retain the talent was the intention of offering a higher salary, and then the other two positions, there are two ladies also were given an increase.
Is that, when you say it's low to comparable to a city this size as far as the employees go and whatnot, or how do you compare that? How do you get that low or high or mid-range?
Well, I think that it was going based on what the finance director from 6 years ago, and when she left, she wasn't part of the increases, so I think that just kind of, they need to bring it up to a more comparable level.
Yes, Councilman Lucero?
Mr. Mayor, Dr. Felix, this is, and I talked to you a little bit about it during our budget meeting, is we went through a classification process previous couple of years, so everyone should be classified correctly, and you know, what I was recommending, at least during our budget meeting, was doing a compensation analysis to make sure that positions are actually being paid competitively for their market price, and this would be a good example if you've got a department head that probably isn't in a competitive position, but if we did an analysis, I guess that's what I struggle with, is that if we recognize it in certain positions or departments, I don't think it's being equitable when you look at the city as a whole. I understand that, you know, you want to recruit a top-notch, you know, HR person, but if we've got classified positions that aren't being paid competitively for their classification, why shouldn't they be compensated accordingly?
Mayor, Councilman Lucero, we are looking at that consistent pattern from here on in terms of making sure that anybody that's brought in, that there is a review of the balance of the individuals that be brought up as well.
And I guess it's better to do it during the budget process. That way you know what the hit is going to be for the entire year and can make those adjustments. So I would, yeah, and I brought this up during our discussion, I would actually be in favor of doing a compensation analysis versus the one-time bonus impact, because all we're doing is kicking the can down the road, and it's sooner or later, when we do this compensation analysis, the impact is going to be greater than what we'll be able to sustain. So then we're always going to be behind the curve and trying to be competitive with other jurisdictions in southern Arizona. So the sooner we address it, and then you know, Mr. Machado, when he was city attorney and overseeing HR, that was what he had told us. He was working on getting everyone classified correctly, and then as soon as we finished, we were going to do the compensation analysis. So I would be more in favor of paying people what they should be paid according to the market, as opposed to doing an annual bonus each year where we're just falling further and further behind, and we start losing people. We're not taking care of our employees. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Yes, Councilman Barona.
Getting back, Dr. Felix, to the comment that the mayor made, does your organization or the Arizona League of Cities and Towns provide an annual salary range, the mean, the median? Maybe you could give us a copy of that, because we use that in the school district when we're working on the superintendent's salary to do that. That's how we guide ourselves. But just to give us an idea who participated in it, so we can make a comparison, because they probably break it down by sizes of the towns.
Right.
If you could give us a copy of that so we can get an idea of that.
We'll do that.
Okay?
Thank you, Councilman Barona.
Thank
Anyone
you,
else? Thank you. Go ahead, Joanne.
Next department is planning and zoning and building inspection. This used to be two separate departments, but this year we decided to consolidate them since they all are under the same director. And there really was no good justification to having them as individual departments. We went ahead and put those two together. So you might be surprised if you kind of looked at last year's, even though we did go ahead and put all the numbers together for both.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to make sure, there was an important presentation that was made. If you could just fill me, we agreed to do a study at $90,000, and you wouldn't spend the $90,000 until July the 1st. But I don't see, where's the $90,000 here?
That was in this year's budget.
So you already hired this person?
Right.
Oh, I thought I had asked, and I thought you had told me that it wasn't going to take place until this next year's budget after July the 1st. That was the response that I got. I mean, if you did it already, Dr. Felix, that's fine. But the response that was given this is an important study, because we're trying to trim down to make sure that people don't get frustrated with us on the permitting process. I just said, if you paid for it already, but that's not what was told to me here at the meeting.
We did contract.
Okay. fine. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. Anyone else? Go ahead, Janet.
Under this department, there's no significant increase or decrease. Next one is city clerk. And again, when there's an election, then the expenses for this department does increase. And this year is an election year, so we have to budget for what we pay to Santa Cruz County to run our election.
Got a lot of money that.
Yes, 18,000. As we move on, we have MIS, decreased by 7%.
That's
There's
another
some-
question on payroll there, Jeanette. Again, staffing hasn't changed. Payroll's big increase. We hired a more qualified department head, is that what we're doing, or?
No, Councilman said we still have the same great qualified people in the department.
Are you adjusting salaries?
Yes, that is what happened. I think there was some discussions with HR, and that was what was proposed.
Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
There's some, Jose, this is for you. Sometimes I get confused because of the school district. But I notice that some of the departments are asking for, like, let me just use the example of the police department.
Decrease.
They're saying that their computers in the cars are becoming obsolete. They need some new ones. They need some in the station where the officers go do their reports. Or why does every department, how come you don't handle all of that in your budget and everything? Why? Because if you handle it, we know that the specifications we're ordering, they don't have the expertise. They could tap into your expertise. But I'm used to all departments that need come through you.
Yeah, and they do. They do. We provide the quotes. We usually handle those projects, but they're the ones that fund it. We have departments like the Housing Authority, Library, that pay out of their own fund for computer quote. The only thing that we really focus on is the backbone of the network, the servers, the routers, the network, the switches, and that type of stuff. We're doing more of the back end stuff. Our budget kept getting cut, so we started focusing more on the core. And another recommendation was the enterprise funds. They should really be paying for their own equipment. It should be coming out of ours. We handle all the maintenance contracts to make sure those get taken care of, and we're always involved when there's a project, a large project like when we replaced the computers in the cars. We were involved in that.
What happens, Dr. Felix, is that one department gets elaborate computers, the other department doesn't get as elaborate computers, and then the third department, just for a matter of consistency. I mean, I'm not asking for you to pay for it. I'm sure that Mr. Perat and Dr. Felix will take it from those departments. But all of the specifications and everything comes through your department. That way there's equity in all of the departments. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you're... Do you follow me, Dr. Felix? So we can have some consistency in the organization. I mean, if they want, it comes out of their budget, but it's got to be funneled through you, so there's accountability, what it gets, who gets what, and that's all I'm saying. That's how I'm used to doing things like that. And
Currently that's what's happening. They'll come to us and we have make recommendations about what type of computers.
Yeah, but it isn't the recommendations, Jose. That's not what I'm saying. You're going to make the decision what's going to be going to make sure there's equity with Dr. Felix and everything. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. And
recommendations is one thing. Implementation is another thing. I'm just looking that all departments have equity. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Verona. Councilman Lucero?
Getting back to the payroll question. So, were salaries adjusted? Is that?
There was some salary adjustments.
And why was the reason?
Classification.
And that's what I'm getting at is I don't mind that we do it, but it's got to be, getting back to what Dr. Verona says, it's got to be equitable. I mean, why should certain departments get recognized and get salary adjustments while others don't? So I'm going to continue to harp on that. So I'm not opposed to it. In fact, I'm in favor, but let's do it for everybody. Let's not be selective. So
And
We've been doing it incrementally, and,
well, how's it prioritized? Why is one department more important than the other? That's what I'm afraid of, so.
but they're all gonna be, taken into account.
Well, I'd rather see a plan to see what the hit is for the entire department or the city as opposed to incrementally, because it's not fair.
Yes, Councilman Varona.
In the face of Councilman Lucero, what he's saying with equity, I concur with the dialogue, okay? But maybe, Mayor, in our retreat, we just wanted to make sure that there's equity throughout the organization. That's what I'm looking for with my point with Jose, and I think that's what Councilman Lucero is looking for. Maybe in our retreat, I like Councilman Lucero's comment. Sometimes you don't want to kick the can down the road, but we can only do so much because of our budgetary restrictions. So if you're going to take Department A, B, and C this year to do that, and then next year C, D, and F, that's fine. But I agree with him. Just tell us what you're going to do so that we all know that everybody's going to get a fair shake, that the next year this departments are going to do, so that I know you can't do it. We can't do it to everybody at the same time. But I agree with him. Just tell us. That's all you have to do. Just tell us who's going to be getting this, when they're going to be getting it. And I don't have a problem with it. I like Councilman Lucero says. I don't have a problem with bringing this equity and making sure so that people have a commitment to stay and work here for this organization. All we're asking for is tell us. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Varona. Anything else from the council? Sheena, go ahead. Jose? Thank you so far.
Just one more thing. In my budget, there's a $50,000 increase that's not reflected in there. One of my line items was labeled as capital projects, but it's actually it was mislabeled. Well, it should have been labeled something else, but so it got swept. But it was $42,000 for replacement of some routers and switches and stuff, and so that was put back in. And there was another one for small computer equipment that $20,000 that was increased to $30,000. That was all in there, but it didn't make it into this final budget. But
So the 42,000 is in the wish list, and we just need to remove from the wish list.
So when we see the budget in its final form, we know why.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Varona.
I just want to make sure that you're responsible for that. Don't come over and tell us that we didn't budget enough and that the police department got hacked. All of the records got hacked in the police department. We depend upon you to have enough or our revenues. We've been held hostage because of our revenues. So please make sure you have, that you guys appropriate the funds so we don't get into trouble of what's happening throughout, globally and locally, okay? That's the only thing. I don't want to look foolish in the community that this happened to us when it shouldn't have happened. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Council. Go ahead, the next.
So now we move on to City Attorney's Office. You will see that there's a 14% increase. We went ahead and reduced legal representation by $100,000, and some of that is due to a lot of the work that was being contracted out was for the IBWC lawsuit, and again, it's more appropriate that sewer should be paying for these legal costs and not the general fund, since it has to do with the wastewater treatment plant. And so now those costs are being reported accurately. So we felt that there wasn't the need for such a high budget amount for that line item.
I have questions on the staffing.
Yes.
We've got vacancies right now.
I had my red pen. I got my red pen.
So the question is, do we intend to fill those positions, or?
I cannot speak for the person that's in charge of that department.
So how many vacancies do we have right now in?
We have two vacancies.
I do not know what his intentions are or what he plans to do.
So if they're not here, could we eliminate them for right now until they justify?
Councilman said I did speak to Mr. Parra, he apologized for not being able to be here, but he did want to say that he wanted to hire a paralegal and asked if we would do an adjustment to pay one individual a little bit more, would bring in someone with more experience, and so that might be a position and a half rather than two positions, is what he's asking for. So.
Okay, so you guys will make an adjustment and bring it back to us?
That's for you to take care of that. I want to get involved in those things.
You're just talking about computers and telling them how to run the
No,
computer
tell them how to do
department.
it consistently. I don't want to run this place like Arizona mining. I just want to make sure of one thing, Mayor. I just want to make sure when this professional at $100,000, that nothing is done to jeopardize what we've been doing legally on the with IBWC. Okay, I want to make sure that you people stay on top of it. That we have, that's a lot. That's a big stake risk for the city of Nogales. So please stay on top of it and make sure that you're transferring this money, but I just want to make sure that these attorneys are taken care of until that problem is settled. $100,000 doesn't compare to the millions of dollars that could happen to us, okay? So
Well, that money's still being set aside, right?
Excuse me?
The revenue, or the revenue
sewer
for the sewer money is still
That's a
being
small
set
part
aside
of the
pending the
whole
outcome of the
deal.
litigation,
Yeah,
so.
but I still want to be.
Yeah, I know, but that set aside money is just a small part of what could happen if we were to lose the deal. We're talking about $50–60 million, not $2–3 million. But that money's still being set aside, I'm for sure, yes.
Yes, so when the bill comes in from IBWC, we record the full amount, even though we're not paying what they're requesting.
But that liability is being taken care of. It's not like Councilman Newbar said that there's not gonna be an increase of a $50 million bill because we're still setting aside the money, correct?
No, the money's still being set aside, yeah.
But again, we're only recording what they are billing us,
Correct.
but
Right.
it could be, if it is 50 million, that we don't have 50 million set aside. We're not
Well, why would it
recording
be
that
50
expense.
million?
Well, if they come out and say that we are the owners of the IOI, and that we have to take care of it, then we have a big deal. Then we have to charge for, right now it's whether Mexico would pay us or what the deal is. So the money set aside is still being set aside, but that's not our biggest liability. The big liability is what it could happen if they were to say, if we were to lose one of the lawsuits with IBWC, which hopefully we won't. But that's why, like Councilman Arona says, that's very important to make sure, $100,000 is nothing compared to what we could lose.
I think you'd have to lose most of them to be able, not just one of them. But irregardless, it's, I think,
Irregardless, we
yeah,
have our
irregardless,
liability.
you have to be on top of it.
Mr. Kissinger, can you update us on where we're at, just because this is not...
So the latest with IBWC on the repairs of the IOI, their latest proposal to the city of Nogales is a 50-50 split. We're rejecting the 50-50 split. We would like to see something more along the lines of 11% city because of flows. So that's where we're at now. The case that the state of Arizona has against IBWC is in litigation, and we're hoping that there'll be a settlement on that. But what the city is pushing for is that we sit down with IBWC and come up with MOU that would have a fair shake for the city of Nogales and not piecemeal it, not just on this repair or just the IOI. We want to have a comprehensive relationship established with IBWC on the treatment of sewage.
Mr. Kissinger.
So actually, we're hoping that IBWC sues us. That way, we can get in court and get our fair share.
Mr. Kissinger.
Yes, sir.
If hopefully we win the appeals, where does that put us at?
Yeah. So the city of Nogales is not involved in any litigation right now. It's the state of Arizona is suing IBWC. We had a direct verdict on the city of Nogales, so we're out of the case. So, but we're still in the negotiations to try to get IBWC to the table to come up with an MOU.
I just want to get that clear. I know we're not in litigation, but the appeal is what affects us.
Right.
If it's either in our favor or against us.
Right.
And the question is, if it's in our favor, how does it affect it? Where are we at?
So the federal judge made a ruling that the IBWC is absolutely responsible for the IOI, and they can't just walk away from it like they have been. And IBWC has threatened that they want to appeal that decision
They
of
did.
the judge. Right, but there's no, it's not going forward. They're looking for a settlement on the entire case.
Oh, okay. So that's where we're at.
The big difference is the state has really gotten involved and is beating them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we have momentum with the state and a little bit of momentum out of Washington. As soon as we get some momentum out of El Paso, then I think we'll be going somewhere.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chester.
Any other questions? Okay. Do you want to continue, Chuck?
Sure. So now we are at court. We had I don't know if it's an 8 or 6%. I forgot my glasses again. They had some savings in payroll. It went from 406 to 394. And they also had some savings in their professional services. They looks like they reduced the legal representation that they utilize for people who need legal assistance. They reduced their contractual services. And then they increased their materials and supplies by $800.
Again, this is one where staffing is the same and you're seeing a decrease in payroll, so why is that?
For that, it's health insurance. We had someone misclassified. I think we had him as family coverage versus single. So that was that's what helped that. Because we had for health insurance last year, we had 66,000, and now we're at 43.
Okay. So they also submitted I guess a similar request on looking at their compensation package. Was that submitted to you, Mr. or Dr. Felix?
No. Okay, I guess while we're on the subject of city court, is there something that you can come up to the podium and?
Thanks, Mayor, Council. Actually, we met with Jeanette and Francisco and Dr. Felix in February this year for our preliminary budget meeting. And the emails that I sent to the Mayor and Council last night is because we weren't aware of the study session today. I think the agenda was sent out, or we received it from Letty Monday afternoon at about 4. But it was our understanding, because I had emailed Francisco saying, what about our wish list items, our budget, across the board pay raise for our staff, because compared to the other counties and other courts, municipal courts, our clerks are not paid comparably. And so what I emailed you last night was copies of all the documentation that was provided to Dr. Felix, Jeanette, Francisco in February. As a matter of fact, the emails were dated. And those reports for the comparisons with clerk to workload ratios, and the request for, we were even submitting a way that we could help cover these increases, and we also asked for a position to be unfroze. There was a position froze in 2010 to kind of offset our employee to workload ratios right now. They're very high compared to other courts. And so we've mentioned this to Dr. Felix, and I know they've been very busy with with miscellaneous issues. And we've been managing, and our employees they show up every day, they work very hard, but they're not compensated like they should be compensated. And I'm gotta tell you, I'm a little discouraged to see that after we provided all this documentation in February, that I've already noticed 42,000 increases in payrolls between 2 departments and 6 employees, but I can't get a 50-cent raise for my employees. So totally agree with Mr. Lucero in doing that study and readdressing job classifications and comparing them with other jobs in neighboring counties to make sure that all of our employees in all the departments are being paid fairly. But this was provided in February, and I don't know if there were additional meetings that were held with the department directors and the departments. We had the one meeting in February and no meeting since. We did get our tentative budget Monday, and the finance department was gracious enough to meet everything that we had requested for in our budget, except our across-the-board raises and possibly an additional position. And so that's why I sent you the information yesterday.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For that information. Any other questions from the council?
Yeah, and that's, Mayor, that's what I was trying to avoid, is where that starts to happen, is one department feels slighted when others are being recognized, and that's why it's a fair process to look at everybody, and then, you know, as Dr. Bona said, maybe come up with an implementation strategy or plan where it's communicated, we're transparent, we all recognize what everyone is asking for, and we all agree on a path forward, and that way no one feels like they're not being taken into account.
And Mayor,
Yes, go ahead,
here again,
Councilman Barona.
the narrative that Councilman Lucero produced goes back to what I said there. We just want to make sure that in the organization there's equity. Everybody's not going to, we can't afford to do everybody at the same time. But we depend upon you, Dr. Felix, to bring these recommendations to us, to work through you, and then you come to us.
We'll continue to do that.
Okay. I just want to make sure, I agree. Our responsibility is that the organization, every employee gets treated equal. As much as we can, as long as we have a plan to tell, well, it didn't happen this year, but you're scheduled for next year, the following, we're going to make these things.
And I don't want to jump to a conclusion and say we can't afford it, because we don't know what that cost is, so.
Right.
I'd rather know what the cost is, and
And we did have a 6% decrease, so even if we could bump up even a portion, you know, I'd ask for a $2 raise across the board for all my employees. I have I don't know, I think most of you probably know Rosa Romo. She is just.
And we're not here to talk about individual
Well,
people. I don't want to talk about individual people. We talk about
Well, I'm
all
gonna
that.
give you
You should be responsible to bring us like that to take care of.
I'm going to share an example.
Not an
She's a
example.
23-year employee.
Mayor, I object to this, Mayor.
Okay.
We're not here to talk about individuals like that.
Right, can we keep it down? Probably the best thing would have been just that maybe an employee instead of bringing out names.
Oh,
Kind of.
I apologize.
Kind of,
First time in front of mayor and council. I just think that her pay, it's less than $16 an hour for 23 years experience, and 23 years with the city. So we're just trying in the court to get our salaries in line with our experience and training and with the productivity they have.
And that's what we're talking about, to get something equitable. And,
That's exactly right.
But thank you so much for
Thanks.
addressing that.
Right. That's what we're trying to do to everybody.
So as we move on to library, they have a 2% increase in their budget. Again, and this is mainly in payroll again. You can see I'm struggling to say that, right, with Councilman Lucero? And again, this is probably a conversation that department had with HR, and salary was addressed, and it was, changes were implemented. If we look at payroll, though, overall was a slight increase, 8,000. Then we go on to police. And they have a 1% increase. Their payroll went up from 6.1 to 6.2. We did defund a position in that department, which helped offset the increase from the pension, and then as well the savings from the health insurance reduction. Other than that, nothing else there's not a significant change, but they do have some items that they would like to have funded, 5 vehicles in particular. That's the high price item that they are asking for, and some computers, which goes back to what Councilman Barona was talking about. They're asking for some notebooks that they need. We'll move on to
Excuse
fire.
me, Jeanette,
Yes.
Go ahead, Councilman.
could you also mention, police, you know, in general, also there was, in our discussions where the high cost of maintenance that they've got right now on vehicles, right?
That is correct. Probably the department that has the most maintenance as a when it when you take vehicles into consideration.
Yes. Right.
And
it
again,
was-
because these
that
vehicles are on the
I
streets.
think the number we talked was somewhere in the vicinity of over 300,000 that we had.
Yes, the amounts that are spent on just parts alone, overall, all funds, is about 300,000 a year. There are some discussions with Enterprise Fleet Management to possibly leasing the cars and seeing if that will be more beneficial to the city versus, and then kind of trying to weed out all the vehicles that are so old and that, you know, it's not beneficial anymore to be maintaining them and getting newer vehicles.
Yes, Councilman Barona.
So do I interpret your comments to be that these 5 police cars that they are requiring or requesting, are you gonna come up to us when, at the conclusion, to come up with a different scenario that we could address this issue?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's, okay, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman.
I mean,
We'll move on
Yes.
to fire.
Absolutely, Virgil.
6% increase. They again, it's pension. They didn't have much to offset against besides the health insurance reduction. And then they are also asking for
fire truck.
whether contractual services went up from 208 to 270, but I believe that has to do with the new ambulance of the billing. Because they're now everything's being done electronically when they create an ambulance run, and before the process was that they would fill out a paper, they would bring it here, it would be mailed, and now they just hit a button and it gets to the processor immediately.
Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, Councilman.
Chief, so I hear some, are you getting did you change from a fire truck to an ambulance? Or is this just the ambulance they're saying to do electronically like the doctors do with their?
That is correct. These costs that you're looking at do not include the cost of any new vehicle. Okay. These are costs incurred from some of the professional contractual services through the new electronic ambulance billing program. And also just, some of the other 6% cost that we had to put back in is, if you recall, the clothing allowance was removed last year, but it was part of the union contract, so we really, we had to that was not replaced, so that was a little bit of a cost that needed to be put back. And then the maintenance cost of the fire engines is going to continue to increase, so we did some forecasting on that. That's some of the 6% increase is the maintenance cost, and then of course some overtime challenges that we have, and that's a more complex conversation, but this is some of the 6% increase. That's kind of what is made up there.
So during our strategic planning, when you made a presentation, you were telling us that you needed a fire truck.
Correct.
But
correct.
I'm confused.
Yes.
You told us before you needed, and now in this budget, You don't
Yes.
need it.
So here's a little bit of the background on that. We do need a fire truck. And what we did was first we put in for a grant. We felt that we had a competitive, chance at that. And part of that grant requirement would be that you would not be able to show a budget for a fire truck. And not that I would ever want to wait. If it was offered to get a fire truck, I would be happy to help with that process. But also what happened is we kind of talked with Jeanette and the city manager, and they were more focused on paying off the lease on our trucks that we have now. And we're still paying off the ladder truck from 2009. And then they wanted to put together a plan. And what they wanted to do was put together like over the next 3 to 5 years. They asked for the big purchases on vehicles for me to wait and to come together with the city at that point and do a big purchase off of possibly a lease. I did ask for a light rescue vehicle in capital. That was removed. That would have been a little bit of an assistance to kind of help maintain the engines a little bit better and a little bit safer for us to respond up and down the city streets. I was hoping to do that this year as a kind of I hate to say it's not a Band-Aid because it would also add some professional services, but that was removed, and then I was told to wait on the fire engine for the conversation to be held later.
So the little fire truck, are you getting that or you're not?
I don't know if we're going to have any further conversations about it. I did request it in a capital, and I saw that it was not. It was removed, but there was no other additional meetings that I've had since February.
So, excuse me. So you applied for a grant to get a new fire truck, and part of the stipulations of the grant is that you cannot show anything in the budget that says there's allocations for a new fire truck. Is that correct?
That is correct. So
I would agree for him to continue with that, but what happens if you don't get that grant? When are you going to know?
We got notification just within the last week that it was denied, and I notified the city manager and Jeanette that was denied. That and the SCBA grant was also denied. I notified them that was denied and asked if we wanted to have any further conversations about looking to fund one of those projects, and was just kind of asked to wait on that. So.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Doc, okay, go ahead.
Councilman Barona, that request in the capital facility budget that you're going to discuss, so that we give you a listing of priorities, and you'll decide what is 1, 2, 3, and 5. So that request is in there.
No, I thank you, Dr. Felix, but previous meetings, I had asked that if you guys could come up for these police cars, and when we were talking about some other funding, about the police cars and the fire trucks, if there was, that you come and give us options of how we could go ahead and do this. And matter of fact, you brought up a viable option that indicated that we could go ahead and borrow from ourselves to make these purchases and then pay them back. Getting back to our strategic plan, our number one strategic plan is the public safety.
And when we're done going through all the departments, I will pull up this schedule next, and then so we can go through and what I've done is like put out the next 5 years. So, for example, Fleet is asking for 2 lifts. Well, maybe we could do one next year and do one the following year, and kind of schedule these requests out, and of course identify the ones that are more crucial.
I agree. Yeah, we should probably look at all the capital requests at once as opposed to going by each department. So,
Mayor?
Yes.
Do I still have the floor?
I don't know.
You said it's quick to point out when I interrupt, so I want to.
You were talking.
Go ahead, Councilor. You can pick. Barona,
Thank
the
you.
floor.
Okay, if that's the way you want to do it like that, Dr. Felix is fine, but that's why I brought it up before. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much, Councilman. Councilman Lucero, would you like to?
No,
have the floor
I'm
at this
fine.
point?
I made my comments.
Yes, Councilman.
Yeah,
yes,
also, with Fire Chief, I think we discussed one time the situation with every time the ambulance goes out, the fire truck goes out. And that was even in the newspaper. What has happened to that? Are we still, they were gonna figure out if maybe send a truck instead of fire
Yes.
truck itself, or because that, obviously that affects the gasoline, that affects the use and tear of the fire truck, which puts us in the situation we're in.
That is correct, Councilman. And again, there are some reasonings to run a system that way, and it, usually seen in more of a metropolitan area. But that's what we were talking about just now with the smaller light rescue truck that you may be looking at here soon to fund. That is what we wanted to do, was start with Station 1 right here, which is our busiest fire station, and replace the fire engine response with a light rescue vehicle. It's basically a pickup truck, and as a chase vehicle to provide that extra needed personnel and tools and equipment in a more efficient manner.
Right.
And that will save quite a bit of maintenance costs, wear and tear, fuel, and also makes a safer response, safer for the city. So yeah, hopefully those are things that we can look at, because that would help us.
Chief, and I'm thinking, when you say safer response, you're talking about maneuvering through these older narrow streets in downtown.
Correct,
Like
and also
Franklin
just the physics of a fire engine coming down the street versus a pickup truck. It's safer, easier to stop, easier to turn, but as well as you pointed out, maneuvering through the streets, up and down the topography.
Sharp turns and narrow,
Yes,
very narrow
absolutely.
streets.
Very unique, the streets here, and that's a challenge that we have.
Thank you for, one more question here.
Chief, have you looked into the thing about the transportation up to Tucson and all that? Where we're at?
I had just actually this week updated a briefing paper that I had created for the previous city manager. I did meet with the previous city manager and previous legal department twice on this last year, and they were interested in starting to look into this a little bit further. The IOI and some of the other things that have occurred have kind of placed that on the back burner. What I wanted to do was, now that Dr. Felix is here and getting settled, is I was going to request actually this week a meeting sometime when he's available, so that I could brief him on that, and I was going to update my briefing sheet on that. I do believe that is something that we can look at. It will have some legal complexities to it. It will have a cost associated with gaining that, and potential for a drawn-out legal road that we would have to take. And then, of course, it would incur some labor and some need for vehicles. Again, I would have to underscore the importance of a compensation study for pay, and definitely fire would need to be involved in that. And I only bring that up now because if we were to take on, Tucson Transports, the paramedic positions are going to be absolutely critical, and we're having a difficulty filling those and keeping those, and able to recruit and retain paramedics. We would need to look at pay for paramedics. So it would come with some difficulties, but in the end, I do believe it could be a profitable endeavor. But it will be a long road in terms of legal expenses and that kind of things.
Thank you so much. Chief, this one.
Yeah, I think we went through that already like 5 years ago or 6 years ago. And at the time, of course, we were told by the fire chief at the time that we could do it, and in fact we bought one or two ambulances that would travel to Tucson that were qualified, and then it never materialized because
it lost
because
in
the
court.
franchise belongs to, I guess, Rio Rico or
Correct.
And they said, forget it, we're not going to give up our franchise.
And those are it's called the certificate of necessity,
right.
And traditionally very difficult to change who owns, for lack of a better term, that portion of the certificate of necessity. I can tell you that I spoke with the CON attorney in my last, just right as I was leaving my last position, and she said with the new governor's administration, they are pushing more of a free market kind of a outlook on that, and some of the CON it's changed the game a little bit in the ability to change CONs, but it's still a very difficult. It can be a very difficult process.
All I'm asking is, don't lead us down the path of spending money,
right?
To go ahead and do this when 90%, 95% chance are it's not going to happen.
Yes.
Which is like I said, what happened there. We spent I guess $300,000, and it never ever materialized. And for some reason, we spent it before we had the okay to do it.
Yes.
Right.
And I agree, Councilman. Absolutely not to put anything in place before we have the ability to do it. I know some of those ambulances, as you said, were bought to kind of show that the city was ready to do it.
Right.
We're now using those ambulances within the city limits, and if you look at our apparatus replacement plan, ambulances is one of the things that is in a decent, we're doing okay, with ambulances, and we drive the wheels off those things as it is, just within the city limits.
Sure.
And so I know there was some cost incurred, but we are using those assets, and yes, we would want to be careful to not put any more cost without knowing that we're going to be able to recoup it.
Well, hopefully now, if we have the digital statements or billings,
Yes.
because that's always been the problem, that I remember at one time, I think we were being paid on 40% of what we billed, or 30%, 30-some odd percent was extremely low, and I don't know what is it right now, what percentage of what we bill is being paid?
I would have to get numbers from the Fry District.
I believe it is higher than that. I would
But
have to
is it
see
at 50%?
the numbers. I believe it's higher than 50%.
Yeah, we could find out, because that's always been the problem, is
Right.
what we get and what we put in just doesn't match up.
Yes. I would say that from interfacility, from hospital to hospital, a lot of some of the unable to bill and write-offs won't be as high because they're already in the hospital, and some of those things are already addressed for them to be in the hospital. If that makes sense. So now they're going to go to another hospital. So collection rate will be higher on a interfacility transport.
Okay, but it just, like I said, just don't come in to spend the money before we actually are going to be able to do the deal, right?
Yes, I understand.
Okay, thank you so much, Chief.
Nothing else, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. We're ready to go to the next, Jeanette.
And facilities. Look this way, sorry. Increase in payroll. Same explanation as before. Some decreases in utilities. Increase in training, and that's due to being in line with the strategic plan. A little bit of an increase in professional services, and then travel as well, because again, if we're going to be sending staff to training, we will incur travel costs. And then just some reduction in equipment rental and uniform. The city changed to a new company this year, so there's some savings from the new provider. We went ahead, many years ago, when the city received a grant from the state to start the Nogales Rights Project, it was reported separately. We came to a point where it was not feasible for us to be receiving funds for this program because the reporting requirements were extensive, and it required an individual to spend a lot of time, and the return on that was $10,000. So we did not continue to apply for that grant, but council wanted to continue to have the program for our citizens. So we had it in a separate fund, and then we would do a transfer from general fund to cover the expenses. So this year we decided to bring it into general fund. It did not make sense to have it in its own separate fund if general fund was picking up these costs. So we eliminated the transfer to that fund and just brought it into general fund.
Mr. Mayor. Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, on the previous slide, Jeanette, on the
Oh,
facilities.
uh-huh.
And I looked at both there and your capital projects, and I'm just wondering where we have the Bank One building expenses, or projected expenses, where would that be?
I'm sorry, for what?
For the bank?
To Chase or back.
That has not been determined yet, so that we really haven't analyzed what the cost will be to have that building as far as utilities and maintenance of the
But we
building.
gotta put something in the budget for it, so gotta forecast something, so either it's gotta be in facilities or your capital. It's not even in the capital side.
I may need to meet with Dr. Felix, and we need to sit down and find out what the cost is going to
We
be.
spent money to buy it. It's a shame that it's just sitting there without a plan. I'd like to see a plan and see something done, so if we're not addressing it during the budget, I don't know when we're gonna address it.
Well, we've got,
Councilman Verona?
Dr. Felix, you told us several times you were working on that you couldn't do anything till after July the 1st, so we could get, so the question is, where in the budget, I don't want to look foolish in the community that we bought a building and it's there with no purpose for it. So where in the budget are you putting the money in to do the remodeling there on that first floor? That's,
Well, we're back on track with the consultants that came in and determined a budget amount, a preliminary budget amount, and then determined where we're gonna dedicate the money to come from.
because
It probably might be out of contingency.
Yes, that's what I was going to say, that
Just
we're probably
so that we
looking
know,
at
because
contingency.
if we approve this today, we can't increase it, right?
Yeah.
We can only lower it.
Well,
So that-
today's not, we're not approving today, it was just a study session.
Oh, just, okay, I just want, all right, that's fine. But I just want to make sure that when we approve the first tentative budget, I guess in May?
Yes, be first.
Okay, in May, I just want to make sure that at that time you come back and tell us what exactly is going to happen in that.
So we'll figure out,
Okay, that's
an amount.
I'm sorry, I thought we were approving something.
Okay. Councilman.
And to follow up, and one of the things that people forget is the vacated space, so whatever is moved over there, something's gonna have to be done with the space that's vacated on this or whatever facility, so there's gonna be an additional cost for the vacated space.
Here again, Mayor, you may not be able to move everybody at one time, but at least we have to have some action.
All right. Okay, anything else from the council? Seeing none, we'll continue, Jeanette.
So the next is Nogales Rights.
You did that one.
That's it. Mayor, I'm very supportive of that because it does help our senior citizens get to the senior center on that.
Then we go to engineering, no significant change there,
Be careful.
2%.
Don't invite people in
Most
this
of it
way.
is the health insurance.
Just a question, Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
How are we doing, Mr. Guerra, with this budget? Is everything okay for the Sonora Bridge and everything? We have funds available for that?
Well, I guess the idea is to use all the way fees, I guess, for those.
I just want to make sure.
We're not to overweight fees yet.
And there is, in the wish list, don't you have bridge maintenance?
That's another.
That's another project.
Well, when you come back with it, Dr. Felix, would you please make sure that there's some funds in there so we can continue with the Sonora Bridge on there? Would you make sure that you work with them?
Yeah, I'm currently working with the consultant, just negotiating and just, he gave me options. So, we have not decided moving forward with that consultant yet, but I will give that to you if we have better quotation.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Seen anything else? We'll go to the next.
Cemetery, 7% increase. Professional services was increased by 15,000. Is that for the street? It's for the paving of the cemetery, so it should be under the report. The professional services is, to improve one of the streets inside one of the roads inside the cemetery. Oh, yeah, and I think there's some additional work that needs to be done on the plots and being able to identify them and locate them. The GPS? GIS, yeah. Animal control, there's a slight increase, and that's due to that we did not receive their budgeted amount in time last year, and we ended up having to pay more, and so now we're using that number for this year, and again, they don't have their budget prepared yet, so this could possibly be change. We reached out to them several times, and they haven't. I don't think they've started working on their budget yet. So
It used to run so good. Now I don't know what's happening.
Yes, we have a question here.
Yes.
Councilman.
On animal control, how come there's just zero staffing?
The contract.
because we pay the county for
Oh, okay.
for the service. There's an MOU with them,
Put me in jail.
or a 98.
I was just wondering, we haven't had any in the last year or two, any outbreaks, like we had that rabbit season going on, and
Not that
It
I'm
was
aware.
actually reported to us that there is a slight increase or outbreak in rabbit skunks throughout the county, and I think Jennifer was sending those emails with an anticipation that budget was going to probably be going up.
Well, it happens about the same
You know,
time.
yeah, I know. Right before budget, there's always rabies outbreaks. I don't know.
And we're almost done with general fund. The next department is recreation. There is a decrease. Health insurance savings. There are building improvements that are not needed this year compared to last year. Seasonal employees, there's an increase, and that's because minimum wage went up. And then just special events, because we've incorporated Cinco de Mayo and the baseball fiestas.
That's fine.
And then we go to parks, and that's an 8% increase. Pension, utilities, I think that's because of the Pearson Field watering. Some repair and maintenance and other contractual services, 39,000. Karen Park? Yes. And then the final one is the golf course. No change there.
yes,
Just on
Councilman
the,
Barone.
I don't know if, thank you, Mayor. I don't know if it falls under recreation or parks, but Marcel, I've spoken to you before. The Ron Turley Field, when they play soccer, the ball gets kicked over and it lands up into the arroyo, the toxic arroyo there. The kids have to go in. I just want to see if you can come up with putting up a net there so the kids don't have to chase the ball over there to the.
And that'll be on one of the capital items that
Okay. Would you? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman.
Golf course, no change.
Can you identify the license plates on the vehicles?
Move on to HERF, and this does have overweight fees incorporated into it. The major changes, of course, the revenues were reduced. And then there was an increase in debt financing. I think one of the bond payments, and then materials, an increase in materials. And that's only because as we move things around in HERF, anything that's left over, we put it into materials and supplies, so that there's more ability to spend in the streets.
Just, Mayor.
Yes,
Are you guys gonna give us a thing on where's the money to fix up the streets? Did we allocate money with that new machine that we bought and everything to go fix up 5 or 6 streets?
It would be all in HERF and overweight fees, is that correct? Yes.
But what are the streets that you're going to fix?
scheduled for term dates that we're working on right now.
Mayor, can we get him to the podium?
Yes, it's kind of hard to hear from him a little bit.
Yeah, for the chip seal, we're working in iron gates to improve the other area
have chip seal. And then the next step would be Nogales West, the whole subdivision with the chip seal. And we're going to follow up that with our fog seal that we did on the rest of the streets. Right now we have scheduled for hopefully by the end of May to do the whole Rancho Grande and Royal Road that we did chip seal at the end of last year to come and do the fog seals that we did on Country Club and Oak and Noon Street.
And L.
Yeah, and L.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilman Lucero.
Are you gonna fix Dr. Barona's street? I hate driving down that street now. It's horrible. I'm embarrassed to drive down that street now.
That's part of the
Nogales West, yeah.
I just wanna make sure. I'm gonna have to get new shocks by driving to his house.
Now, the city will be doing it with the machine that we bought?
Yes, that's another thing that we're working on. That machine is ready to go. We had a meeting today with the supplier for the oil. We're going to be doing some training in our own yard to make sure that we don't go on the street and we make mistakes. So we're going to play a little bit with the machine there.
Practice on his street.
And then we're going to start doing that ourselves in some of the streets that are more appropriate for that treatment. So together with the chip seal, we're going to be doing the slurry seal that we can do with that machine.
Has the city reached out at all with the county to maybe have a couple of their employees kind of guide, because they do that all the time?
Chip seal?
Yes, chip seal. That's what the county.
Yeah,
they don't pay.
We do the chip seal. We train with them. We now they have the people that does the chip seal. I think they're doing a really good job. Matter of fact, I would say that they do better than the county, but is my opinion. Because we train with them and because the county normally they have unpaved roads that they go and grade it and make that really
They make it look like paved roads?
Yeah, because they have the luxury that they don't have paving under, but here we have the paving under, so we cannot go and rip off the whole thing. In the county, because it's dirt, they can smooth that out really nice, and then they come and chip seal it. It's a lot better product for that. But because we have paving here, we just put that on top of it.
Just practice all you want on Marcy's road.
Something is something.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. We hope to see the results of those great jobs we're looking forward to seeing.
So again, in overweight fees, we're not proposing any change. Again, it's a combination of the revenues we anticipate we'll collect, plus any carry forward from the previous years.
And I got a question on that. Can we start getting a breakdown on the projected expenditures on overweight? I know we passed a resolution supporting some contribution to SR 189, and we're also contemplating Sonora Bridge. I know we did industrial, so just wondering where we are, and just at some point, if they ever do SR 189 and the state comes to us for our match or our funding commitment, it'd be nice to know that we have it. We haven't.
Yes, I think that's future revenue, Councilman. But anyway, it'd be nice. But it's nice to know where we're at anyway.
Yes, and actually, we're going to work on giving you more reporting as to the expenses throughout the months. That's something that Councilman Maldonado also asked for. That way, there'd be a better comfort level when you're making decisions on certain items.
Because he just likes to spend money. He doesn't care where it comes from.
And you forgot my math right, because we agreed to.
See, what I tell you, he wants to spend more money.
Now we're at SOAR. Again, if you look at the bars, there is a slight increase from last year. That's related, since we are anticipating to generate more revenues, and of course our expenses go up to meet the revenues so we can have a balanced budget. The professional services, again, is for the legal representation that we're obtaining for the litigation. And then interfund transfer 4,600. Payroll has decreased significantly. I don't know if Mr. Martinez, if you've, it might have been the health insurance since we have a lot of the. A reduction in payroll. You know, many times when we budget the positions, we assume that it'll be family coverage, and then someone's hired, and it turns out they're single coverage, and so that's the savings to the fund. It's a health insurance. Yes, health insurance went down from 148,000 to 89,000. Payroll, small increase, but that's because of the one-time savings, or the one-time payment, sorry, and then basically the one-time payment. Then we move on to pre-treatment. No changes there. Small savings for the health insurance. Actually, the health insurance went up, that one. Not sure why. Then we go to water. Again, you'll see an increase here. Same thing, the rate increase from September causes expenses to go up. And if you look at our reserve, we're looking at almost $800,000, which could be utilized for the projects, but as Councilman Verona mentioned earlier, it's still not enough to cover the projects that are being proposed. Sanitation, basically no, just a small change, 4%. Payroll significantly decreased. Services went up a little bit, 3,500. Materials and supplies went down. We did make some, we did reduce some of the fuel, and so now we're, you know, that might have not been such a good thing with prices going up. That's where you'll see the 38,000. We did, our fuel budget was very high compared to what we've been using. And then I did show the internal services. But just keep in mind that all these expenses are already incorporated into the other funds. I just wanted to give you an idea of what is spent out of all these different departments. But every month we take the total cost and we allocate them to the general fund, HERF, water, sewer, and sanitation, and housing. And if you see here the graph, it'll show you the allocations by fund.
Do you take any funds out for finance, your costs?
For what?
For your costs, for the allocation?
Well, and yes, actually 2 years ago, we did start allocating back to water, sewer, and sanitation the costs for finance, HR, city manager,
accounting
legal.
Services.
Yes, especially since we do the billing for them, so. And process their payroll and everything, because if they didn't have us, then they would have to contract with someone to do all that. Inventory warehouse, no changes. And then public utility, which is Mr. Barcenas, his staff, all their expenses get allocated back to the three funds, water, sewer, and sanitation. And then Nogales Housing Authority, just a small change. Reduction in payroll, increase in capital. And so then we get to the unfunded requests, and actually I made another spreadsheet that I think will be easier to follow. I don't know if that's very easy to read, but you do have the spreadsheet in front of you. And
The Mayor?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
There's a lot, I'm just gonna suggest, Dr. Felix, on all of this here, that I know that there's some people that need some vehicles, especially in public works and all of that. Their vehicles are also getting old, but maybe at the next meeting you can come back with the ideas that are shared here with you, but I'm still looking at the fire truck and 3 police cars. And maybe taking some of this other thing, giving him some more money to IT to make sure that everybody's spread across evenly for that, okay? And
It's getting late.
yeah, we can do that, and you can come back with solutions for us to do that.
Mr.
Yes,
Mayor.
Councilman.
Yeah, and Dr. Felix, I think the wish list is too long. I mean, every department's got like, some departments have 5, 6, 7 things on them. They gotta cut it down. On the roofing, I don't know, they've gotta get bids, more bids on the roofing, because some of the roofing to me seems
Outrageous.
out of control, right? I've just done a lot of re-roofing lately myself personally, and it doesn't match up to what is here, especially square footage wise, right? I mean, you look at the square foot, this is quite a lot of money. In fact, Dr. Barone and I are thinking of going into the roofing business.
That's what I'm just saying, we should hire you. You sound like you work pretty cheap.
So if they could cut down this list, I think the staff can work with them to cut this list down quite a lot, because if we were to go through this whole list,
I don't know
we're
who
here
runs the
for
senior center around here,
another,
but they sure
10 hours,
jacking
right?
up the bids.
So,
Who's in charge of the senior
Yes,
center?
Councilman Diaz.
Yeah, I have a question. Going along the same lines, I wouldn't mind going into the lift business. You could, it says 2 vehicle lifts here for $50,000. You could buy a 10,000-pound vehicle lift for $5,000 at Pep Boys. For $5,000. Yeah. And then on the police cars, yeah, I understand they need police cars. What I would like to know is what kind of police cars and where they're gonna buy. I don't know if we could buy them locally here to one of our dealers here, and I don't know what kind of performance they're getting out of the Explorers or the Tauruses they have. I know they're fuel efficient and they'll probably save money on gas. So, yeah, I agree that we need police cars, but what kind of police cars are we getting?
And Mr. Mayor,
Yes, go ahead,
also, talking to Councilman Diaz, also if we look at buying them a little later towards the end of the year, where the 2017s are still available instead of, or the 2018s are still available instead of going to the 2019s, there should be a savings there, right?
Well, Councilman Newbar, Valencian, we are looking at vehicle purchase as a whole, and then on these items, we're doing the due diligence. And I look at the roofing, and I saw that we're out of proportion, so we're going through all the entire list and get some realistic dollar amounts, and then prioritize based on urgency and rather than want. And so then we'll come back with a short list with more reasonable prices.
Yes, Councilman Barone.
Dr. Felix, we have over 300 excellent employees. Any department head can come over here and ask us for increases of particular individuals. I'm not in the position, nor do I want to be, and I don't think anybody else wants to be, of dealing with individual requests. You need to tell your directors and everybody, you're there to make those recommendations to us. So I hope that you work with these people and make your recommendations to us. I don't want to deal with individuals like that. Because then it puts us, well, why are you favoring that person, not favoring this person? You need to take care of that. You need to be a shield for this mayor and this council to make sure that everybody's treated fairly, everybody's treated equitably, and that you make your presentations here. Okay, would you please? Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman.
I'm open to hearing from everybody.
Any other comments from the council? Jeanette?
And I just want to add on the capital requests that are currently not funded. There's been several ideas that we've been going through. Is the lease, the U.S. Bank lease does end in December. We'll be done paying the one that we took out 5 years ago, and then also the ladder truck. The last payment will be in October. So for the ladder truck, as it be paid off. So one thought is to go out for another lease. Another thought is that we utilize the funds that we have in the bank instead of going out and borrowing money and paying interest on it. We just borrow and pay ourselves back. Also, I'm working on presenting a fund balance policy. And again, if like general fund is doing well, then you could say we want to use 1% to reinvest in our capital to make that money work. So we currently don't have a policy in place for that. So that would be something that we could look at and help address all these issues that are not being taken care of.
There's those policies.
That's it.
Yes, Councilman Diaz.
One more item that I think we should put in there is that rescue chase vehicle for the fire department. I think it should be incorporated in the bucket list.
It's in there. Marcia brought it up. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilman.
I want to commend staff on a great budget presentation. It was very informative. Did a great job, Jeanette. Thank you. I know it's difficult working with a lot of departments that want everything, and you guys have to be the bearers of bad news, and then we have to deal with it. So great job. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for jumping.
Would it be possible, Mayor, Dr. Felix, could you put under the city clerk's budget that every meeting that there's a budget there, line item for the city clerk to take care of, so that we can have our sandwiches over there? Would you please, for every meeting, put that in the budget?
Okay.
At least here,
There's some of us that
Also,
are.
Mr. Mayor, let's not forget the home rule.
That's right.
Yeah, let's not forget it because
that'll affect our budgets.
it's kind of a big problem. All this we'll be discussing will be irrelevant.
No sandwiches,
Motion to adjourn, Mayor.
Thank you. We have a motion to adjourn.
Mayor,
Oh,
but I can't like to point out that we've made arrangement for the retreat for June 13th.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be at the Pima Association of Governments building on 1 East Broadway from 8 to 4, 8:30 to 4, and then we'll go and register at the hotel for the Arizona-Mexico Commission meeting.
Oh, all right. Good. All right. So, seeing no other questions or comments? We had a motion. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Meeting adjourned.
You want to run, you want to run.